Hi, I'm Anthony Mangano, and welcome to another edition of City of Churches. Today we're going to be visiting St. Luke's Church in Whitestone, Queens. Now this neighborhood, well, it's uniquely located farther up the East River. Now it's between College Point and Bayside, which is just north of Flushing. In the mid-1700s, this area was mostly woodlands, and it was owned by a man named Francis Lewis. Now you see, he was a member of the Continental Congress and a signer of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Today, there is a street named after this great patriot. It's called Francis Lewis Boulevard. In the 1920s, in its close proximity to Lasky's Paramount Film Studios that was in Astoria, made Whitestone an ideal place for several Hollywood movie stars to live. Now among them, Rudolph Valentino. There was America's sweetheart, Mary Pickford. And of course, the little tramp himself, Charlie Chaplin. The biggest landmark in this neighborhood is the Whitestone Bridge, and it connects Queens to the Bronx. It's one of the longest suspension bridges that was ever built. In more recent years, Whitestone has also produced former New York Mets outfielder Mike Baxter. Well, Mike started his baseball career in the local Little League when he was just a little kid attending St. Luke's Church, which is our next stop right here on City of Churches. Hi, and welcome back to City of Churches. Today we're in Whitestone, Queens at St. Luke's Church, and I'm here with Msgr. John Tosi. Msgr, thanks for inviting us here to your beautiful church.
Well, welcome to St. Luke's. We're glad you're here. It's the only church named St. Luke in Brooklyn and Queens.
Really?
Yes, Catholic church. And the founding congregation tended to be German, and Luke was a saint that was popular among the German immigrants, so I think that's how it got its name.
Well, how is St. Luke represented in this church?
St. Luke is represented mostly in stained glass.
Ah, my favorite. This is one of my favorite things.
St. Luke is represented in the window behind the altar. There's if you look up at that window, there's the saint all the way to the left is Luke, and you can always tell it's Luke because he's holding a piece of parchment and a pen.
Oh, yeah.
And so he wrote the Gospel of Luke. He's an evangelist. So he's always pictured with this parchment and pen. There's a stained glass window behind me on the side of the church. And again, it's a huge window, and St. Luke is there holding his parchment and his pen. The figure in red is a very unique and rare image of St. Luke. St. Luke is the patron of two groups of people. St. Luke was a doctor, a medical doctor. So he's the patron saint of doctors and all those in the medical profession. He's also the writer of one of the four Gospels, so he's an evangelist. That's why I said you see him with a pen and a piece of paper.
Yeah.
But an unknown element of Luke's life was that he was an artist.
Really?
And he was a well-known painter, artist. And this picture shows Luke as the artist. It's from a Dutch master, a larger work, which it would have the Blessed Virgin Mary holding the baby Jesus in her lap. And Luke, if you can see it, has a paintbrush and a palette, and he's painting an image of Mary and the child Jesus, because tradition tells us that Luke painted the first picture of the Blessed Virgin Mary.
Really?
Yes, because Luke and Mary, tradition tells us, knew each other. So this image is unusual in that it portrays Luke as the artist.
He was very creative.
He never met Jesus.
That's amazing.
Okay, because Luke is Greek. He wasn't Jewish. Luke was a good listener. He listened to the stories of Jesus and wrote them down. So he learned from the eyewitnesses who this Jesus was and became a true disciple of the Lord, even though he never met the Lord.
Can you tell, not just me, but our viewers, the history here and why this was established?
Well, St. Luke is one of the older parishes of Queens County. It was a farming community, very scattered group of Catholics. They used to go to St. Michael's in Flushing. They had to travel to Flushing to get there, and eventually they were able to get a parish established. And eventually they built a church. But it's interesting that in the beginning, they worshiped in a Quaker church.
A Quaker church?
Which was built by a man named Leggett, who was a rather wealthy financial person. And he built the church almost as a non-denominational church. So Episcopalians worshiped there, Methodists worshiped there, and Catholics. Eventually it became a Catholic church. They worshiped there for a number of years until they were able to build this church in 1898.
So this was built in 1898, and this is the original church?
The original church with some additions. It's the fourth oldest church building in Queens County.
Wow.
Imagine what this was like in 1898 when this structure was built in an area where there were so few people. It must have seemed like, a cathedral. It must have seemed like a monument. The architect was a man named Poole, P-O-O-L-E, and he describes it as English country Gothic.
I can see that.
It has a kind of a Gothic arch look, and it is a kind of a country-looking church on the outside. It's a red-washed brick with limestone trim and tracing. So it's basically a modified Gothic church.
I see it. I see the design. The outside does look like a country church, but when you come inside, there is an English appeal to it and Gothic look to it.
And the church looked a bit different when it was first built because the transept, where we are now, was added in 1939, 1940. As the congregation got bigger, they needed seats. So originally this church didn't have the transepts, and it was just a straight line from the front door to the back wall. This is all new. It was built in 1898, and within a year it was dedicated. And it cost $15,000.
This church cost $15,000?
Yes.
Oh my God.
And they requested in a letter to Bishop Mangano permission to spend that money.
You can't even buy a car today.
Someone told me that this morning. It's amazing. It's amazing. And the workmanship is superb.
But back then, they put such detail, and you can look, and the work that was done, and this wasn't done overnight. This took time.
In the modern design of things, it's simplicity and straight lines.
Yeah.
And I think it's a bit of a reaction to a more traditional architecture, which would have, had the detail work, the scroll work, the arches and all that. Here, we have a little bit of both. We have some very clean lines.
Yes.
And yet we have a great deal of detail. I'm always amazed. There was a renovation here 2 years ago.
That's what I was going to ask you about. How many renovations?
Well, there was a renovation under Msgr Gorman. He did the first renovation of the church, placing the design as we now see it. Then about 2 years ago, we did another renovation, which basically had to do with preservation and maintenance. But in doing that, we found out the roof had never been replaced. Up until then, the roof was the original 1898 roof.
See,
and it didn't really leak that much.
That's my point. I stress this. Call me an old-fashioned guy, but the work that was done years ago stands today.
We couldn't afford to build this church today. I always tell the people we need to be grateful that our ancestors in the faith gave us such a beautiful building, because we really couldn't make this building today. So we need to preserve it.
There's so much history and stories that are told without even words being spoken when you come into a church. What is the ethnic background now that comes here? I mean, what did it start out with? We said German, but...
It started out as German-Irish. It remained that way for a very long time. Then the neighborhood gradually changed to an increase of Italians.
Okay.
And right now I'd say the predominant nationality here in the parish is Italian. We have an Italian Mass every week, and we are the largest Italian-speaking Sunday Mass congregation in the Diocese of Brooklyn. But we still have a sizable congregation of Irish German.
Tell me about the music ministry here.
We're very blessed. We have a wonderful music director, Jessica. You might know Jessica. Jessica Smith, she also sings at the cathedral. She's part of the diocesan music ministry. She sings at all the major events. She's been at the ordination, the Chrism Mass, so you would know Jessica.
Sure.
She's our leader of song and cantor. She directs our choir. We're blessed with a large parish.
Really
so
nice.
we have a very young congregation, and in a sense, that's a bit of unusual in Brooklyn and Queens. It tends sometimes to be an older congregation.
I love stained glass. The detail in the stained glass, there's a story to be told in each frame. Who designed these particular stained glasses, if you would know?
Well, there are two sets of stained glass window in the church. In the nave, in the main body of the church, those are original from 1898, so we don't really know who designed them.
Okay.
But they're an interesting set of windows because they're luminescent windows. People will call them stained glass, but they're a very unusual type of stained glass, and it's called luminescent glass. And it's made by fusing 4, 5, 6 panes of glass together. If you notice, there's a sparkle almost to them, and the color, the variation in color is made by the fusing of the glass together. That's why you can't see out them, but the light comes in. And they're a particularly American, they're only made in America. So we know they're made in America, we really don't know the company. The front of the church, the transept windows are brand new. They were only put in maybe 5 years ago.
Oh, now I can see because
Right.
those I can see.
You see the difference?
Yes,
These
and
are,
those I can't.
Right, these are traditional stained glass, which allows you to see through the window. The windows represent stories that are found only in the Gospel of Luke. The eighth grade students in the school did a project and looked at the Gospel of Luke and picked out the stories and the miracles and the parables only to be found in Luke. And then I asked them which ones would they like to see in the church. So the youngsters kind of picked these windows, and they're all from the Gospel of Luke, except obviously Mother Cabrini, but she's the patron saint of immigrants, so we thought that was appropriate. These windows were designed by Bob Rambush, who's a very well-known American liturgical designer. They were made by a company, the Rolf Studios, which are here right over the bridge in the Bronx. So they're locally made, and they tell a story. Each one tells a story. You have the prodigal son, you have the Good Samaritan, miraculous catch of fish, the curing of the 10 of the lepers, the raising of the widow's son. So those were the stories that they decided they wanted in the church, and we were able to put them.
That is a story in itself, right there. That's really nice. That our viewers are going to like that. That the children picked these out. Which is your favorite?
Oh, that's putting me on the spot.
I have to put you on the spot.
Well, to be honest with you, my favorite is the raising of the widow's son. I think that to me speaks. And my second favorite is the miraculous catch of fish. I love the way the fish are kind of coming into the boat, being dragged in by the net.
We're going to show pictures of it.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal image.
So you have two.
And also the thing about these windows, which someone asked me, oh, did you have the old design? Because if you look,
They're very similar.
right, and one of the things we wanted to do was to unite. It was almost, we had two churches, one with windows, one without windows. One was rather modern, one was rather old. So we tried to make it a unified worship space. And so they are copies of the windows in the nave in terms of design. The crosses on the top were taken from the windows in the nave.
So now that I look at it, I see that.
So it's they are a mimic of the design work that was done in the first part.
Wow. And it's amazing, the luminescent and then the regular, but they both are beautiful.
Right. And then there is this stained glass window behind the altar. When the church was built, there was no stained glass window there. That's an addition. And it's an interesting window. You have Luke, you have Joseph, you have Mary, and you have St. Francis, and a very rare image of Jesus. In the middle is, if you could get up close, it says, the boy Christ.
Okay.
The boy Christ. That's a very unusual. Either you have a grown man or you have a baby, but that's a boy.
I see that.
And
yes.
It probably is related to Luke, because Luke tells us many stories about Jesus in his infancy, his early years. So I think that image was put there to honor Luke. You'll also notice that there are images of Francis all over the place in the church. There's one up there. And the reason for that is there was a pastor here for 46 years. From 1919 to 1965, they had one pastor. His name was Francis Dillon.
That was nice.
So I think that, they honored him by putting in the window to honor his saint. But he was here 46 years.
Let's discuss some of the statues here. How many are here from the beginning?
The only one from the beginning is the statue of the Blessed Mother.
Oh.
In fact, she just came back to us. She had been removed in the course of the years, no one knows why, and put in the school and kind of got lost up there and forgotten.
Wow.
And through a whole series of events, we discovered her through a picture of the old church. And Jesus's hands were all gone. Her hands were broken. So we had her restored. So that's the original statue of our Blessed Mother. People were so excited to have. They don't even. So that's
from
original.
1898.
Right.
Wow. So that's something. So that and then but to look at it, looks brand new.
Yeah. Well,
so they did a miraculous job.
It was really great. Yeah. So she's the only original statue we have.
Oh.
Joseph has another interesting statue. That's white Carrara marble, and that's brand new to us. But it comes from a church in Brooklyn that was closed. St. Ignatius in Crown Heights. The diocese has this warehouse where you can look at different items, liturgical items that are from closed churches. And the reason we did that is when we did the renovation, all of the work was put under the care of St. Joseph. So we wanted a kind of a special statue.
Monsignor, can you tell us about the Stations of the Cross?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because there's a very interesting story about the stations. Originally they were colors, but over the course of time, for whatever reason, they were whitewashed. People really didn't like them. So they asked us if we could restore them. In the restoration process, we discovered on the first station a little plaque, which had been whitewashed over too. We cleaned it up, and it said, Franz Meyer, Munich, Germany. Franz Meyer is one of the most well-known liturgical designers in the world.
Wow.
For example, he did all of the stained glass windows at St. James Cathedral. He's done stained glass windows all over the world. But he did do some work in stone and other material. These stations ended up being precious. They were made in Germany by Franz Meyer, which would have made sense because, as I said, the original congregation was German-Irish.
Yeah, that makes
so
sure.
They probably went back to the old country and brought these over.
Isn't it amazing? You found out through just renovating.
Just cleaning. And we actually called Germany. They were able to tell us that they had records of it being sent to St. Luke's. Unfortunately, during the war, a lot of their records were destroyed in bombing. So they couldn't give us any color scheme. So therefore, that's why we removed the white and left it stone, kind of a tribute to the fact that we couldn't really restore them to the way they were originally, but we were able to bring them back to the stonework. And they're beautiful. Actually, the details are wonderful.
I think they look beautiful, just the way they are, without the color in them.
Yeah, and when you get up close, the expressions on the faces are just marvelous. And that tabernacle has an interesting story. That tabernacle was put here by Monsignor Gorman in the first renovation in the early 80s. But again, it was removed. Why, we don't know. We found it in the convent basement, and we restored it. And so the people were happy to see it again because it had a certain age to it. All of the pieces in the sanctuary were put here by Monsignor Gorman in his renovation. What we did is we kept them, but we changed them. We took out some of the wood and in its place put in granite. So there's a contemporary piece to this, but I think it harmonizes well with the more traditional architecture of the church.
We're going to take a break, but when we come back, Monsignor's going to show us something very unique here at St. Luke's. So come on back. We'll be right back. Monsignor, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Well, I thought we could start with the crucifix above the altar. There's a very interesting story with that crucifix. It was made by a monk from the Trappist Monastery of St. Joseph in Spencer, Massachusetts. To make a long story very short, it actually turns out that the monk graduated our grammar school many years ago.
Wow, that's interesting. I noticed the candle bars here.
Yeah, the candlesticks also have a little bit of a history. I'm sure many of the viewers would remember the World's Fair, 1965, I believe, and the Vatican Pavilion. Well, those candlesticks are from the Vatican Pavilion. And the reason we have them is that Monsignor Gorman, who was pastor here, was also the man in charge of the Vatican Pavilion. So when it closed, some things from the pavilion were brought here. We have the candlesticks, and we have those lights in the back of the church are also from the Vatican Pavilion, so we're very proud to have them. The missal stand, it's a simple missal stand, but it has a great significance. We talked about a relic. That is actually a relic because it was used by Saint Pope John Paul II when he said Mass at the Aqueduct racetrack when he visited New York. That was the missal stand for the book used by the Holy Father. This is a cut down of the altar used by His Holiness Pope Saint John Paul II when he said Mass here in the diocese at Aqueduct racetrack. That altar was cut down, and the D'Ambrosio Studios, who made that altar, gave this to me as a gift because I worked on that Mass when I used to be in the liturgy office. So again, this is a treasure for us here at the parish because it truly is a relic. This is where the chalice and the paten of the Holy Father would have been placed with the book stand off to the side. So we're very honored to be able to have this.
Touch it, do you?
No, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Greatness here, so I don't mind touching.
So yes, it's a treasure. It's a real holy object.
Monsignor, I have to tell you, there's been so many interesting stories, and you have so many interesting things here at St. Luke's. I just want to thank you for sharing this with me and all our viewers out there, because I found a lot of things fascinating here. You really have a great church here.
We have a wonderful church, and I invite you to come back, and I invite the viewers to come and visit us.
Definitely, and I want to shake your hand and thank you on that.
Thank you.
I just want to say to everyone, listen, I hope you enjoyed this great episode here at St. Luke's Church in Whitestone, Queens. And I just think it's been so fascinating. So many things in here from the St. Luke's and just so many great things. And if you have any questions about this church, you can get us information on netnewyork.net, or you can follow us on Facebook or Twitter, or you can write into us at 1712 10th Avenue, Brooklyn, New York 11215. Until next time, I'm Anthony Mangano with Msgr Tosi here at St. Luke's Church. I want to say thank you for watching. Please come back for our next episode, and God bless you.